Welcome back to Dragon Ball Dissection, the most affectionate, gutting, and caustic celebration of Dragon Ball you'll find in these here YouTubes. Don't say I didn't warn you. So with the heroes having failed miserably to stop the release of Majin Buu, the story is now slowed down to allow planning and plotting, reflecting, and a complete breakdown in logical progression. But in time. We'll get to that. We saw some of it in our last episode, but one wasn't enough to cover it all. For now, let's catch up with Gohan. If you recall, Gohan's attempt to fight Majin Buu could have gone better, so much so that several people believe he died. Sadly, the only person who knows differently is Kaioshin, but since his face took quite a severe beating as well, he's not making much headway in finding Gohan. Yamcha's Dragon Ball wish has returned Kibito to life, and he sets out to find Kaioshin. Kibito has healing hands, so once he finds Shin, Shin leads him to Gohan. However, before they heal the unconscious Gohan, Shin wants them to take Gohan to the sacred Kaioshin realm. Up until now, Kibito hasn't had much of a presence. To be fair, he's been dead for a while, but even before that, Shin constantly upstaged him. If he had any characterization up until now, it was, humph. From this point on, Toriyama saddles him with a fussy butler persona. Think C-3PO if he was a bigot.
A human in the Kaioshin realm? So unorthodox, it's never been done before.
Gohan is healed up and zapped with a matching outfit to the other two. Like I said in December, the Great Saiyaman outfit has become a tattered ink blob by this point, so I'm okay with Gohan getting new duds, even though they sadly do not follow him off this planet. The Kaioshin realm, just as you might have guessed, is a fairly generic and indistinct looking location with grass and trees and some rocky outcroppings, a few occasional celestial bodies in the sky. It's planet Namek for gods. Kaioshin has brought Gohan here so that he might make use of the Zetto Sodo, or Z-Sword. This is a fun little in-joke, or at least I assume that's what it must be. We never really get much background on the Z-Sword, so we don't know what it's named for in-universe, but it's most likely some kind of a nod or a dig at the name change the animated series had undergone. It's surely the most overt reference Toriyama's Dragon Ball series ever makes to the letter Z. I assume it's a fun little reference, but I certainly hope it's not Toriyama chasing clout after seeing the popularity of Dragon Ball Z and realizing he missed his chance to hop aboard the money train. See, my series has a Z in it too. It does! It totally does! The idea, of course, to pull a sword out of a stone, as Gohan is tasked with doing, is an obvious callback to Arthurian legends. Gohan even quips that this scenario reminds him of some old story. Gohan expectedly struggles to pull the sword out, raising Kibito's smugness to unbearable levels. But of course, we've seen this gag with Goku in the Southern Kaio. All Gohan need do is turn his hair gold and that sword pops right out.
A human with a sword? But the gods can't, and it's not. I can't even. I'm overcome. What about tradition?
I like this new Kibito. While we don't yet know what will come of this plot point, it's obvious that Toriyama is setting up a second tier of potential savior. Goku's plan to save them all is to use fusion, but unbeknownst to them, Kaioshin has a plan to power up Gohan. And eventually we'll get to see which plan works out. This is the formula that goes all the way back to the Mafuba versus the Choshinsui. The tennis match hasn't started yet, but we're already lining up our various balls. Given how much this story arc is already taken away from Gohan, it'd be ridiculous if this didn't amount to anything. Right? After Goku transports everyone back to God's temple, the question is asked about Gohan's and Vegeta's whereabouts. Goku reasons there's no sense in putting off the bad news, and informs them that both are dead. Goku does not know what we know. None of them knows that Gohan didn't die and is actually off training in the Kaioshin realm. He's taken hearsay and mistaken it as fact, just as Piccolo did, and is now passing that bad information off to many other people. Such an error sounds perfectly reasonable, until you give it more than a moment's thought. 2 episodes ago, I said that I liked what I dubbed the Gohan telephone game. It's an interesting consequence of various groups of characters receiving limited information of what only the audience has the full picture of. That complicates matters and allows the story to be explored through different perspectives. It's a concept I am totally on board with right up until this moment. I'm going to do something weird and jump quite a bit ahead to use something as an example. Later in this story, Piccolo is in the Room of Spirit and Time. During a moment of crisis, he makes an assertion that time on the outside of the room is speeding by with every moment they remain. That is wrong. It's actually the other way around. Time moves significantly faster in the room. It's possible that this was done on purpose, writing a character making a mistake so that he can later realize that mistake and be shocked by the consequences. And that is exactly what happens. 5 chapters later, when there's a break in the action, Piccolo comes to a revelation that he had been wrong, and that's used as a justification for why a character could have survived when Piccolo assumed he couldn't. Do I personally believe that was done on purpose? No. Do I instead believe Toriyama screwed up and was forced to double back and correct it? Oh, yes, I do. Despite the justification given, Piccolo's inability to convert time doesn't really have any impact on the story. You could cut out those 2 bits of dialogue and not really know you missed anything. But Toriyama sells it well enough that it works. In fact, it ever so slightly improves that moment over, "Oh, hey, you survived, good job." Whether it was done on purpose or not, Piccolo's mistake makes the story feel more complex and a reveal more satisfying. Basically, everything in fiction should serve a purpose to advance plot or character. You can't really get away with saying, "Oh, people in real life make unexamined mistakes all the time, so it's realistic." In a narrative, that's just distracting, making the audience wonder what it's doing there, when it's going to pay off. So what does any of this have to do with Gohan? Whatever the motivation, whatever the intent, that situation demonstrates that characters can make mistakes. They don't have to know everything, and they don't have to get everything right. But more importantly, they demonstrate that, in order for such a concept to work, if an obvious mistake is made in the heat of the moment, then there has to be a point where cooler heads prevail and the obvious correction is made. Once Piccolo has a moment to think and converse with other characters, he figures out where he went wrong. None of the characters here ever come to the realization that it's practically impossible for Gohan to be dead. And I'm not saying that they should somehow piece together that Gohan has been spirited away to a godly dimension. I'm saying that even by their own garbled interpretation of events, that Gohan was killed by Majin Buu, they should know that Gohan can't be dead. Why? Because even if that was true, they just finished using the Dragon Balls to bring people back to life. Just like with my Piccolo example, the news that Gohan is dead is immediately followed by a more urgent and immediate concern: Babidi reaching into their minds and doing a whole lot of terrible things. I can understand why that would distract them from properly processing that information. But after that, most of the characters sit around for 2 days with nothing to do but think and talk to each other. You're telling me that there is no point where a single one of them questions whether or not Gohan should have come back to life? I can even see Goku or Kuririn not figuring this out because they didn't witness the wish and probably assumed the wish made was to bring people killed by Vegeta back to life. Gohan would not qualify under those terms, and they can't use the Dragon Balls again for another 4 months. Or 6 months, whichever chapter we happen to be in. But there is no moment where Yamcha, or Bulma, or Chi-Chi goes, "Wait a second, you're saying Gohan and Vegeta were killed? Well, we just made a wish to bring everybody who died today except bad people back to life. We specifically worded it that way to encapsulate as many potential calamities as possible, because we knew you guys were involved in something dangerous." Okay, maybe Vegeta doesn't count in that. He is arguably evil and definitely has been wished back to life before, but how would Gohan have been excluded? Has he spent the past 7 years making crystal meth and handing it out in orphanages? Did he die within the 5-second window of us making the wish and Goku showing up to stop us? Because if he died at any point today prior to that, I think we're good. Are we at all curious about what Goku and the others have been doing since they left the tournament? Because even the vaguest recap should make it immediately apparent that the conclusions we are drawing are all but impossible. Did anybody here actually see him die? These are all very obvious inquiries that would almost certainly come up at some point, and any one of them would at least put the question of Gohan's current status into very heavy doubt. But I guess we're just supposed to assume that none of these characters ever talk to each other, no one who missed the wish cares to find out what it was, and no one who was left behind has any curiosity in regards to finding out more about the evil wizard who just infiltrated their minds and is the reason they're all forced to take shelter. And that's not even getting into how Piccolo, who so respects and reveres Kaioshin, never spares a thought as to what happened to him from this point on. There's no way around it. The characters act as if that section of the story, and no other, exists in a universe where people can't be resurrected. No matter how I approach this, there is just no good reason why these characters should think Gohan is dead. But them thinking Gohan is dead is going to ensure they're not preoccupied with wondering what happened to him. They're not going to be asking questions or looking for him. This allows these plot threads to remain comfortably separate, just like everyone assuming Goku is dead in the Piccolo arc. That certainly streamlines the story and allows Gohan's survival to be treated as a shocking reveal, which is good. But that does not justify the characters being this obtuse. It would be as if Goku shows up to save Gohan and Krillin from Nappa, only to have Krillin declare, "This is impossible, I saw you die, therefore you must be dead right now," even though he can and does clearly piece together that the Dragon Balls were used to bring him back to life. Some might argue that there is a justification for all of this. Krillin tells Videl they know Gohan is dead because they can sense ki and his is gone. Just like in the Cell arc, the hero's hubris blinds them to other possibilities. To that I say, no. Not only would that demonstrate they've learned nothing, but Krillin's rationale isn't even consistent with itself. You know that Gohan is dead because you can't sense his ki, but it continues to be brought up that you can't find Tenshinhan because you can't sense his ki. And you know what? As pedantic as I might be, it's not a huge deal to me that there is a minor inconsistency in the somewhat vague applications of this magic power. I'll bring it up because I notice it, but I'm not going to tear it apart for that. No, what kills it for me is that it ignores the fact that not everyone present in this conversation even has that ability, and would therefore not be framing the situation through that perspective. That variety of viewpoints should be an asset, allowing them to piece together a more accurate picture. Remember how everyone reacts to Goku's arrival differently based on their own personalities and relationships? That's all gone now. These are cardboard cutouts meant to take up space, not characters. The Dragon Team speaks with a stupid, unified voice. Any insight by the characters would interfere with the story Toriyama is trying to tell. So my issue is not so much "Ermagerd plot hole," as it is an author stamping out any organic or logical reactions in order to force through a very dubious idea. Why is this a problem so many readers fail to even notice? I'm certainly not saying that I'm the first or only person to blow the lid off of this, but it does seem to fly under the radar much better than most other potential plot holes. If this is as obvious and as gaping as I claim it is, why is it so often overlooked? Well, here's my theory. It's because we're in the role of the all-seeing audience. We're the only people who can piece together all the sides of the story. Given that the narrative intercuts between the Heavenly Realm and the Kaioshin Realm, we know that the characters are wrong, and we also know that they're supposed to be wrong, purposely written wrong. When Krillin assures Videl that Gohan must be dead and that her feeling that Gohan actually survived is just wishful thinking, we feel smart because we know better. Because we're in agreement with the story that the characters are wrong, that everything is proceeding as planned, and because the initial justification for them assuming that is sound, we overlook the fact that they're now wrong for reasons that are no longer valid. Basically, once we've accepted this cognitive dissonance as logical, we no longer feel a need to question it. Strengthening that is the fact that Gohan's fate is left rather ambiguous for a while, even to us. The particular framing of Gohan implies he's not dead, but we don't really know until Kaioshin confirms it. It's not until after the Dragon Balls are used that his fate is explicitly revealed and he is returned to action. That separates those two events in our minds, keeping us from noticing that connection. Or at least, that's my guess. Anyway, I did mention an interruption here. Babidi uses his magical powers to reach into the minds of every person on Earth and give them a message. He introduces them to Majin Buu and demands to know the whereabouts of the three who had crossed him earlier, who we see are Piccolo, Trunks, and Goten. As incentive to help him, Babidi has Boo demonstrate the destruction he can cause. He levitates everyone out of a nearby city, turns them all into candy, and eats them. I know I keep saying this, but it is so gruesome yet so hilarious. It makes me want to laugh, and that makes me feel bad about myself. That is a good juxtaposition. By some measure, I feel it allows Toriyama to really go all out in terms of carnage. Not that he shies away from it in general, but I keep thinking of this one panel where we see Boo smile, all these bits of candy ground up in his teeth. Those are bits of people! It's an image that out of context is harmless and silly, but when you think about what it represents, it's despicable and grotesque. It's also really cute how these messages are represented as POV shots, so Babidi is talking directly to the camera, like some twisted infomercial salesman. He's so cute! After Babidi explains that people can contact him just by thinking it, a tournament official reaches out to him, giving the names Ma Jr., Trunks, and Goten. However, Babidi doesn't care about their names, only their locations, so he treats this information as useless and causes the man's head to explode. See, I told you Toriyama doesn't have any qualms about graphic violence. He just renders it as harmless candy because he's a gentleman. It is interesting, though, that this guy only has their names. Maybe he's low on the totem pole and doesn't have the list. You know, the type of list that Piccolo uses to hunt down all the tournament competitors? Or maybe after that catastrophe, the tournament stopped keeping a database of martial artists' addresses. That's certainly an inconsistency I can accept. Piccolo is so furious at this callous disregard for life that he insists on heading out now and fighting Boo, but Goku stops him. No, you mustn't! If you die, who will teach fusion to the kids? Yeah. It's not as if there are over a dozen other people here who could watch and learn this. It has to be you, Piccolo, you and you alone. You're the only one who matters. For some reason. Why do you keep hammering this in? It didn't make sense the first time you insisted it to be true. How does it make any more sense if you keep saying it? Goten and Trunks are awakened and they deal with the grief of Vegeta and Gohan being dead. Goku pulls them to attention to start teaching them. Piccolo asks if they should use the Room of Spirit and Time, which is a reasonable course of action with absolutely no drawbacks that would allow the boys to learn the move almost instantly and defeat Boo and Babidi before they have a chance to cause any harm. So of course Goku says no. I feel like I've seen a few comments recently questioning how the Boo arc could possibly earn the lowest score in my system, given how relatively positive I've been to it up until this point. Oh, there are a lot of reasons, but this 10-car pile-up of stupid sure isn't helping. I can't take a step in any direction in this video without face-planting directly into something that doesn't make any sense. It's pretty obvious that Toriyama realized that the room would completely nullify any tension in the story if it's used here. Because of that, he decides to address it head-on. That's good. But that's only half the battle, folks. Realizing an obvious complication in your narrative is a good first step, but you have to couple that with a believable explanation of why the magic room can't solve all your problems for you. Otherwise, all you're doing is calling attention to a problem that might not have been noticed otherwise, which just makes things worse. Goku's reasoning for not allowing the boys to use the room is because, as stated in the Cell arc, a person can only spend a total of 2 days in there ever. Goku thinks they might need the room later, so they shouldn't waste that time now. That is the stupidest reasoning I've ever heard. We're going to see that Goten and Trunks learn fusion in 1 day. Do you know how long that is in the room? Less than 4 minutes! Supposing they're working under the assumption that it would take the whole week that Goku claimed it took him to learn fusion, that would be half an hour in the room. Even ignoring that this is a desperate enough situation that I think any concerns about saving the room for more important times is kind of moot, half an hour is an insignificant dent in the 2 days of available room time they have. Goku is that RPG player who finishes the game and optional super boss with an inventory full of unused deadly super spells that he's holding on to just in case he needs them. For all we know, the Room of Spirit and Time could nullify any and all time issues related to Goku. I mean, if he goes in there, what basis of time is counting towards his 1 day on Earth? Conceivably, he could spend the better part of a year there, and he still wouldn't have been on Earth for 24 hours, right? He could teach these people all the techniques he picked up in the afterlife. He certainly wouldn't need this roundabout plan of making Piccolo his surrogate. Even if Goku can't extend his remaining time that way, and would just blow through what he has left, it would still at least get Goten and Trunks up and running faster. But even if we take it to its most absurd extreme, that Goku is not allowed to enter the room in this form at all, the boys going in the instant Goku leaves would still save the better part of a day. Hours upon hours saved that Buu is going to spend killing people. Way back in the day, Vegeta worries about the possibility of Nappa's city-destroying blast damaging one of the Dragon Balls. Do we not care about that stuff anymore? Because Buu doesn't just turn these people into candy, he destroys the entire city too. Isn't it better to try to get this done as quickly as possible? Why are you people so incredibly stupid? Toriyama seems off his game at this section of the story, unable to properly navigate this onslaught of logistical obstacles. There is so much going on he has to juggle, and the further into Dragon Ball we get, the more magical loopholes and complicated rules the story introduces that have to be taken into consideration and written around. Toriyama is aware enough of them that he knows he has to do something, but he doesn't seem capable of putting in more than the bare minimum sloppiest excuses to try and work around them. And that's when he's not screwing up his own made-up rules. As a result, we hit this litany of confusing and nonsensical plot points in rapid-fire succession. Most of them are just rushed through hoping you don't notice. Goku doesn't have time to train anybody in fusion, so Goku will train Piccolo instead. There's a magic time-displacing room that we can't use because Goku says so. Everyone thinks Gohan is dead despite the fact that the Dragon Balls were just used. How many wishes do the Dragon Balls grant? 3! Oh, wait, it was 2? Wait, it's now 3 except when it's 2. Yeesh. That's enough complaining for now, I suppose. Gohan and the boys start making some progress in their goals next time, and pretty soon Goku gets to show off some new moves as well. Thank you for watching. I'm speaking directly into your mind with my benevolent Madoshi powers. There's danger on the horizon. Gohan not being dead created a huge plot hole. That could really mess up your car's alignment if you drive through it. Help me plug it by engaging with this video, sharing it with your friends, or donating on Patreon. This is a question of rectifying our damaged and outdated Dragon Ball infrastructure. You don't want my magic friend to turn you into candy, do you?